Hey guys, Gerry here from the DeFi Alpha Gaming Guild. Got a video for you today on the Nexus protocol and what they're trying to build out. So let's get into it. A few days ago, Nexus did a big alpha drop on basically what they're looking to build out over the coming year or so. And there's quite a bit in here to dig into. So basically I thought I'd just jump in and try and explain in basic terms what's going on and why these guys, are looking pretty bullish as a project going forward. At least I think anyway. So they're basically trying to pitch themselves as a bit of a Wi-Fi, YEarn finance style protocol for Terra. And they're using a lot of community feedback and input to try and build out things that the community actually wants and would use. So let's dive into what their plans are. Basically, they're going to split themselves up into a few different offerings. Initially, they just had the vault, where the idea was you could come in and deposit some B assets, B Lunar and B ETH. So these are the staked assets that you deposit within the Anchor protocol and use to borrow against. So the idea is that you could deposit your B Lunar, borrow against it, and these guys would run an anti-liquidation service. So your LTV would never get liquidated. But as you can see, the returns actually aren't that high and they're paid out in the PSI token. So to be honest, the first iteration of their project hasn't actually done very well. That yields not even higher than what you can get for just borrowing and depositing into UST. Plus, it's paid out in PSI, and the PSI token has been smashed because of it. It's had a bit of a tick up in the last couple of days since they dropped this roadmap. But if we go back to from when it launched, it's a pretty typical sort of pump to start with, and then a big crash that you see in a lot of crypto. So it had a few things working against it. It had KYC, so US investors couldn't get in on the pre-sale, so a lot of people FOMO'd in at the start. It was also one of the first protocols that launched after Columbus 5. So lots of people in the Terra ecosystem were sitting on massive Lunar profits and had huge borrowing capacity. So this unfortunately for them, it pumped, it dumped, and lots of people have sort of lost interest in the project. So they're sort of trying to reinvent themselves a bit, and that's what they're doing here with this new roadmap. So they've got the Vault, which is their existing product, plus a few other ones we'll talk about that are less risky and has some hedging and anti-liquidation stuff going on to protect you. But they're also putting all these newer projects, newer offerings that the community are asking for that are a little bit more degen, that are going to offer higher yields and do all sorts of crazy stuff, but on the blockchain to make it simple for people. And then lastly, they've got a whole new product entirely here, which is an LP money market. So it's a borrowing and lending facility, if you like, that allows users to deposit their LP positions and use them as collateral. So that's excellent for the ecosystem because there isn't a whole much available as a money market at the moment other than Anchor. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes, especially when the Mars protocol starts up, because I don't know if you're going to be able to use LP positions as collateral or not. So this concept, depositing an LP token, that's what has made Magic Internet Money and Abracadabra so successful over in Ethereum land and the other chains that it's gone to. So that'll be interesting. So they go into great detail what these new strategies all are. So one of them's the mirror short leveraged UST farm. So a fair bit going on, but the concept is essentially you come along with your UST and deposit it into their vault. In the back end, they mint a UST, so they deposit it into Anchor, get you your 19-20% yield on your UST. That can be used as collateral to mint synthetic assets in the mirror protocol. As soon as they mint something, they go immediately and swap it for more UST. They sell it. And that basically gets a leveraged position on UST. So I'll just quickly explain how that works in a bit more detail. So if you go over to Mirror here and over to Farm, these are all the offerings. You can create a synthetic derivative of an asset. Most of it's traditional stocks, so Google, Tesla, some other cryptos, that's Polkadot, Microsoft, Twitter. But one that I would probably look to do this strategy with is something that's a bit more stable and also a basket of assets. So this is the S&P 500, the top 500 stocks on the stock market in the US stock exchange. So pretty stable, really. And you can get paid 8% to long it or 2% to short it. So the idea is that they come in and short it. So what you would do is deposit your AUST. As an example, let's say we're putting 10,000 AUST in here, $10,000 deposited into Anchor earning interest. You can then mint a long or a short position. This is a short position. And you have it at the safe threshold. And as long as the S&P 500 doesn't pump, because this is a short position, if it doesn't really increase in value and get you below this minimum threshold of 130%, then after 2 weeks, you get this money back, 6,600. But you also immediately get this because you've minted this asset, the short position on the S&P. So that's 14.46. So if we were to go over to Terra Swap now and put in 14.46 for the SPY, you get $6,500 back if you sell it immediately. And in 2 weeks' time, you also get $6,600 back, provided you don't get liquidated. So essentially, you've turned $10,000 into about $12,000. Pretty cool, hey? So straight away, they have more borrowing capacity or more buying power, I guess, if you like. And then they can come back in and repeat this process again and again. Turn your $12,000 into 13. And they would loop this however many times to give you a meeting a target yield, basically, on your AUST. So that's pretty clever stuff. It's all automated. Not quite sure what risk threshold this falls into, but I'm sure they go into all that detail for you. And some of these you may be able to select, how much risk you want to take. There might be a sliding scale that a user can actually select. So that'd be quite interesting. But really cool product. Good way to basically just leverage up US dollars, which is obviously pretty stable. So a good way to get extra yield on your dollars. You're already getting 19.5%. But if you can turn $10,000 effectively into 20, you're basically going to double your interest there. So that'll be cool. The next one is the LP money market itself. A little bit complex, but the concept here is at the moment you can really only deposit your Lunar or your B Lunar or your B ETH in Anchor to borrow against it, which is fine. But a lot of people want to be an LP provider. So, for instance, if we go and have a look at the rates you can get on Terra Swap for being an LP, currently this fluctuates obviously based on the prices. But for instance, providing Lunar and UST, you're getting 32%, annualized, paid out in Lunar and UST as swap fees. So that's a good way to generate some yield on your assets. So a lot of people do like to have some funds parked in LPs. Like this is a good one, Lunar and B Lunar, because it's basically the same asset. There's no impermanent loss. They're pretty stable, and you get an extra 2% interest on your Lunar. So that sort of thing is there's lots of funds locked up that people can't really use to borrow against. So this is just Terra Swap, 700 million. That's just sitting there that essentially can be unlocked to borrow against. So this LP money market could actually capture quite a lot of liquidity. So it's got a few reasons why you might want to do that. So your LP position is always increasing in value because it's always picking up those swap fees. So basically your collateral is always increasing and your debt is slowly getting essentially paid down or diluted because of that. So this little example here just shows you the difference. If you were just to hold 50% Lunar and 50% UST, that would be your expected returns. If you were to LP in a traditional sense, these would be your returns. This is assuming that, Lunar appreciates in value. But with this strategy, you get these sorts of returns. So, that's the selling point. You can do better than simply holding 50-50 or LPing as you would normally. So that could be quite popular. Plus, people just want to they want to leverage their assets. So the idea here is that you deposit your LP token. So say it's got 10 Lunar and $1,000 UST. you deposit it in here, and then you can borrow either $1,000 USD against it or the 10 Lunar back. And the way this works is it's a two-sided market. So the people that are borrowing, they need people to deposit an equivalent amount of assets. So why would you want to deposit? Because you're going to be getting significantly rewarded in doing so to provide these guys with the leverage. And that's how most money markets work. So to be able to do this with LP positions is excellent. It's going to open up a lot of liquidity, and the velocity of money through the ecosystem is just going to sort of speed up because of this. So they go into a bit more detail in the comments here, which are probably worth highlighting. So, here's an example of what you could do. Potentially you could, put your Lunar UST into the LP pool and, approximately 40% in swap rewards. Then you could use that borrowing capacity to buy more Lunar. You could bond it as B Lunar and then deposit it into the Nexus vault and get an extra 7%. And then this protects you from being liquidated. It's the anti-liquidation service. So, there's no real extra risk here. There's just more yield for you. And you're taking a longer position on Lunar than you would otherwise. But they also go through, the percentage yield that they could capture here. So looking at 87%, the reason it's 87% is it's double this essentially, because a borrower can only borrow half of what they deposit. So they're going to have up to 87% yield to spread between this side of the market and this side. And it's going to be dynamically shifting all the time. So if they don't have enough UST in the pool, this all doesn't work. So that percentage yield that you get from depositing UST will spike up, when needed. And the whole idea is it's going to be sustainably higher than the 20% yield you get in Anchor. So if you just want to get more yield on your UST, come along and deposit it in here, and it's going to fluctuate, but you might get 30%, 40%, depends on what the market dictates. So that's going to be really interesting. It's a brand new product. I don't think there's anything else out there like that in Terra thus far. So they may get first mover advantage on this as well, which is, quite exciting. The next product that we want to look at is an on-chain rebalancer vault, or a grid bot. So it's been suggested by CFI here. So CFI is an absolutely prolific lunatic in terms of the social space here. This is his Twitter account, and you can see people commenting. Someone was saying, "Hey, weren't you guys just talking about this on a space like a few weeks ago, and now suddenly you're building it?" And it's pretty crazy. So the speed at this is all moving is just amazing, and the fact that a lot of it's being done at a community grassroots level is super cool. So CFI, like I said, is prolific. If you have a look at Terra Spaces, shout out to Terra Spaces. You can listen to all of this stuff. He's on here. You must be here 20 hours a week almost. So what's that? 13th of Jan. Those two, there's 4.5 hours of him just talking about Lunar and helping, people with questions. And I'm sure you'll find him again. Here he is a day later, another 2-hour one with Stater. So prolific. Here we go. It's another one, 2.5 hours. Sorry, almost 3 hours. The next day. And then 2 days later, there's another 5 hours. So this guy just lives and breathes it. Somehow he holds down a full-time job as well, but he's got a lot of smart ideas, and he uses these grid bots on KuCoin. And he says that they work wonders, especially if you're just trying to generate yield. So there'll be lots of different ways that this will work over time. But the concept is, say you have Lunar and UST in a grid trading bot, you might have 50% Lunar, 50% UST. And whenever Lunar dips below a certain threshold, it market buys it. If Lunar rises in price by another threshold, it market sells it. Rinse and repeat. So in a volatile market like we have now, if this is like a reasonably small threshold, say 1%, 2%, drops 2%, buys more Lunar. 3 hours later, it pumps up 4% from there, sells it. 2 hours later, it drops again, buys more. So you can see it within the course of even just a few days, this can accumulate a lot of value. Now, if you're 50-50, then you're going to get potentially impermanent loss, all that sort of stuff. So you might be long Lunar, but still want to pick up a bit of yield during, the crab season that we're in at the moment while stuff goes sideways. So maybe you put 20% UST, 80% Lunar. So you're still long, but you're also picking up some yield in a volatile market. So sounds like something that's very popular on KuCoin. One of the benefits of having it on the blockchain and having it in a vault is you literally just put money in, and then at the end of the day, you take money out. So theoretically, for a lot of tax situations, that's much better. And this does all the work for you. So it might be a really cool way to park some profits and just generate some yield. So that's the grid bot. The next one is Lunar Mixes strategy. So this guy's another prolific lunatic in the social space. So if we have a look at his Twitter profile here, let's go up to the top. Here are the strategies that helped me turn $6,000 into over $2 million. And he's got a bunch of tweets. He's basically doing a high-level sort of training course for people. The idea is you read all these tweets and it gives you all the context, and then he does a series of Twitter spaces that are an hour or 2 hours long, talking you through all these concepts and how, with discipline, you can really leverage your Lunar position to buy more Lunar in a relatively safe way. So it's quite cool. This spreadsheet here lets you manually tweak all your settings, but basically the Nexus protocol is going to do all this for you within the protocol itself. So that has obvious benefits. The idea simply is user deposits their B assets, so their B Lunar. They borrow UST against it. They buy more B Lunar. And then basically the whole process is just about managing your loan to value ratio to make sure you don't get liquidated, and just optimize it as best as possible to accumulate as much Lunar as you can again and again and again. So to be able to come along and just hit a few buttons and click go and be able to sleep at night knowing that these guys manage your loan to value ratio so you don't get liquidated is a really cool way for people to just accumulate their Lunar bags without much effort. And again, it's simplifying your tax positions as well, potentially. So I think there's only maybe one more left. Yeah, so this wrapped asset strategy basically tries to address the problems or the shortfalls, if you like, within Mirror. So this Mirror protocol allows people to buy synthetic stocks like we talked about earlier. So if you're in a third world country that doesn't have access to traditional finance and buying stocks on stock exchanges, but you want to get some Google exposure or Tesla, you just come along and mint some of this. And then you've got price exposure to Tesla. But the problem is it doesn't actually generate dividends that the real companies would. This is just price, following the price. So the idea here is, with this last vault, is say you've got your Tesla stock, synthetic M asset from Mirror. You could deposit it into the Nexus vault. They use that M asset as collateral. They borrow UST, and then they create a short position using that M asset, and lets you harvest some of the yield, almost like a quasi-dividend. So the finer points on that and the maths around it are a bit lost on me, to be honest, but that's the concept. So, straight away you can see that they've built out 5 pretty unique products that are going to make things a lot easier for certain people that want to do different things. And I just feel like that potentially has the chance to generate lots of value over time. How that relates to the token price and the tokenomics sort of remains to be seen. But I definitely think there'll be a lot of users of this protocol. So that's a good place to start with any protocol, is to get some real traffic and volume running through it. And over time, you can work out how to tweak your tokenomics and capture value. So as you can see here, this is taking a fee in AUST that goes to the Nexus treasury. Some of the yield on either side of this, a small percentage is taken and returned to the Nexus treasury. So I'm sure all of these have a way to capture value. There's another example of the rebalancer, the grid bot, rebalancer bot, which is quite clever. Actually, just on that, one thing that's probably going to happen over time is this will evolve so it's not just Lunar and UST, but potentially this could be a basket of assets, a basket of B assets. So you can sort of think forward 6 months, 12 months from now. Anchor's probably going to have B Sol, B Atom, B Polkadot, B ETH, B Lunar, all of the proof of stake assets as collateral. So you could put sort of 4 of them in a basket, maybe 20% in each. So say B Sol, B Atom, B Lunar, and B ETH. Or maybe you want a really volatile asset. And then the last 20% you might make UST. So that it's going to rebalance constantly, because on any given day you might have 3 protocols that are down and one that's pumped. So you'll sell out of the one that's pumped. Say Solana pumps today. It sells out of Solana and it buys the one that's dipped the most, or balances it out between them. If the whole market tanks, then you'll have some UST to buy the dip. If the whole market pumps, it'll be able to sell out of those 4 B assets in whatever measures are predetermined and buy more UST ready for the next dip. So that could be super impressive over time, and I think that'll be a very popular product. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for today. So thanks for watching. I hope that was useful. Bye.